Well, howdy y'all, this is Mike with Fly All Season, and as some of you may know, I am not a pro fly attire and I am not a guide. I'm just some guy. But when you fly all season, you gotta tie all season as well. Every week brings a new adventure, and every adventure brings a new challenge. And to chase that bite, we gotta have the right flies in our box. So let's take it right now to the vise and see what's cooking up for this week's adventure. Yes, indeedy, folks, we have a hot little number that I like to call the drift missile. Oh yeah, it's a fun tie, so stick around. And before I jump into the actual tying process here, I want to offer a quick material list because some of you out there are always interested. Real quick, it's a 3-part fly: the base, the tail, and the body. Now, in the base, I'm talking about the cone head, the curved nymph hook, and the lead wraps. Moving on into the tail, just a little bit of crystal flash, a pinch of dubbing, and then our Zonker strip. And then finally, ending it all off with the body, we're looking at a dubbing loop consisting of dubbing, maybe some other things if you're so inclined, some barred rubber legs, and then finally that Zonker strip that continues on from the tail. And folks, disclaimer, this is cooking and not baking. I implore you to use your own materials, be it size, color, whatever it might be. Make this your own fly, but I'm just offering this up as a general blueprint, not so much an exact recipe. So with that being said, folks, let's jump right into this with our base section. And much like every other fly that you tie, it starts the same way. We got to put that bead on the hook on the vise, and cinch it down tight. Now, before we actually attach our thread to the hook and whatnot, we need to find the dummiest, thickest lead wire and wrap that sucker up tight, leaving a little bit of a gap between the hook gap itself. We don't want to crowd the hook gap on this particular fly, but really make some nice wraps, get it all cinched down, and really work the tail of that lead wraps because we don't want that sticking out, cutting our thread. But once we have that all nice and cinched down where we want it, we can finally attach our tying thread. And for this, I'd like you to make maybe like 3 or 4 passes across the lead wraps to really lock it in, and then kind of cover up some of those gaps. So as we continue the fly in the later sections, our thread's not falling through into those gaps, if you catch my drift here. But once we're done with that, we're gonna make some touching wraps all the way back down to the end of the hook bend, just for aesthetic purposes. This is more so to your liking. I think it looks cool, adds a little bit of a hot spot towards the end. But once that's all taken care of, we're gonna move right into the second part of this fly, that being the tail. So this tail section, it is subtle, I'll give it that, but my goodness does it make this fly look so good. So, as always, you don't have to follow this, but man, I think it makes the overall presentation super cool. Not so much to the fish, but more to the tire of the fly. But with that said, we're gonna grab 1 strand of crystal flash, cut that puppy in half, and from there, we're gonna attach it to the back end of our hook. That gives us 4 fibers. Now, really cinch those down, make it nice and tight, because if this gets hammered, you don't want those flying off. What I'm gonna do, something, again, a little subtlety here, is I'm gonna make some wraps in front of those fibers. And the reason that I do this is that this creates just a little bit of a ramp that pushes those fibers up. So instead of going down towards the hook bend, they go up. They're coaxed up, let's just say. And I've had a lot of times where I'm ripping streamers or swinging things, and because of the cast or because of the current, those fibers like to get caught up and under that hook bend, giving it a silly presentation. We don't want that. So just those little wraps make the difference in the end, I promise. But moving on from that, we're gonna grab a pinch of dubbing. And for this particular fly, I'm doing kind of an opposite approach. So the base of this fly is going to be a copper brown style. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a pinch of tan dubbing. And this tan, again, it kind of offers a bit of contrast and a bit of a hot spot towards the back end of the fly. I don't know if it makes a difference, but I like it. So just grab that pinch, cinch it down, and obviously we're going to have one side that's kind of blowing out the back. We're going to snip that snug and kind of do your best to clean it up. We'll fix it all, more towards the base of this fly. But then preen out the back end, get rid of those loose fibers, and we are almost done with this tail. The last thing we got to do is grab our Zonker strips and attach them. And working with Zonker strips can be a little bit frustrating. So what I would suggest doing is either have a glass of water, or if you're not a sissy, just use spit. get your fingers nice and wetted down and really preen those fibers back, because what we're doing here is we're creating a platform for our thread to go down on. We want to make sure that this thing is locked in tight, but again, less is more with our thread wraps here. So be very careful of not making a giant gap. And once those are all locked in, we're going to finish up our tail section with just a little pinch of dubbing to clean it up, make it look nice, cover up the red, and then we're going to move on to the body section. And this is by far the most involved section of this fly, so pay attention to your order of operations and make sure you're taking these steps very carefully, because I've made more than a few mistakes trying to tie these flies going outside of the order of operations, let's just say. But to start this all off, we need to start thinking of our body, and to do this, we need to make our dubbing stack. So on a kind of a separate platform, usually clean away from my tying desk, I like to stack my dubbing, and then also, this is kind of an optional thing, these weird rubber legs that are these really tiny rubbery leg things. They're really cool. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a separate stack, and then I'll go back to my fly. Once that is made, it has to be complete for us to even start that dubbing loop, because if you try and do one or the other, it's going to mess up the dubbing loop, or it's going to mess up the stack. It's a mess. Just trust me. So make your dubbing loop, transfer very carefully the stack to your loop, get all situated in place, and then probably the most satisfying thing in this entire fly is spinning that dubbing loop. And give it a few really tight spins, make sure it is getting all cinched down and tight, and then what we're gonna do next is we're gonna brush it out. So brushing this out kind of gets rid of some of those fibers that we don't need anymore, be it the loose rubber or the loose dubbing itself, but it also makes it a lot cleaner when we're actually going to wrap this whole dubbing loop system onto our fly. And that is the next step. So we're going to start making touching wraps with our dubbing loop towards the cone head of this fly. And I want you to pay attention here, because I want you to leave a little bit of a gap between the cone head and the end of our dubbing loop. And when we're done with that, we're going to add just a real quick aside, 2 barred rubber legs on either side. So it gives you 4 fibers coming off the back of that. Again, I think it looks really nice, and especially when it's flowing in the water, it is a sweet look. But I don't want to get too caught up in that, because what we're going to do is we're going to pull that Zonker strip back over the body. Cinch it down right after you put on the rubber legs, and from there, this is where why I want you to leave this gap. We're going to make a really nice Zonker collar. I think this is what makes the fly, kind of gives it its signature look. It's seriously so cool. But once you get it cinched down, be very, very careful and just be patient with the Zonker strip. I mean, the leather is very malleable, so just, again, move slow and don't force anything to where it breaks, but you can be a little bit strong arm with it and just make touching wraps overlapping slightly towards your cone. And you're going to create this absolutely killer collar that in the water, much like everything else on this fly, gives it so much movement and so much look. So once that's all wrapped in to where you like, overlapped perfectly, right up into that cone head, we're going to cinch it down really, really, really tight. And this may take kind of a little bit more time, but trust me, you want to build up a nice thread head, really cinching down that Zonker strip, so again, it doesn't come off after the first or second cast or, hits from a trout. But then once we're done with that, this fly is pretty much complete. Give it a couple nice whip finishes, and again, this is complete personal preference, but I do not care for glue or epoxies. I just give it 3 or 4 solid whip finishes and I call it a day. And there we go, folks. This fly is done. Now, normally, I don't like to name my flies. Number 1, because I don't think they're that special. And number 2, they change so much. So I don't really have one particular pattern. Each one's a little variation, a little tweak here, there, and what have you. But this is the kind of blueprint I've been using for a lot of my streamers lately. And I figured it was time, give it a name, make it official. This sort of fly is what I like to call the drift missile. And if you don't know that reference, go listen to Zilikima's new album and you'll understand. Nissans only. It's a sweet, sweet little reference, but it makes sense. These kind of streamers, they're heavy, they're durable, they get dented up, they get beat to hell, but they'll keep swinging and Tokyo drifting their way to big old bucky nasty browns. I seriously love these kind of streamers because they're heavy, so when I'm using them, it's usually on the swing. So what I want to do is I want to get down to the fish. This with the cone head, the lead wire wraps, and then the heavy shank. This thing, I mean, they are heavy as hell. So what I'll usually do is I'll tail something off the back, be it a copper john, a midge, a soft tackle, maybe even a smaller streamer. And that's what I'll swing through. And my anecdotal streamside evidence, you know, take it for what it is, but what I'll do is I'll have a lot of fish going off of the big drift missile as I'm swinging through. And I can see them kind of raising up out of their little hidey holes looking at it, and then they'll go off the smaller streamer or the smaller midge, whatever it is on the back. So this gets their attention, and then boom, the back fly, that's what they munch down on, because they might not be so eager to eat. But man, when they are eager and they blast these things, it is so freaking cool. So folks, go tie up a few of these bad drift missiles. Let me know what you think. And yeah, I'll see you in the next tie-in video. Well, howdy there. If you were seeing this, that means you have made it to the end of the video. And all I gotta say is thank you as always. And followed quickly by, I am so sorry. I am right by the highway where it goes over the river, and it's loud. I don't know what to tell you. But what I can tell you is that we've got all sorts of fly out season content if you're really digging this channel and what we got going on. So, of course, we've got the Instagram, the Discord, and the Patreon. Those are kind of separate things, but still really fun, kind of the fishy pics and yeah, the community side of things. But also, and this is pretty new, I would say, we have the website. Brand new, spickety span, typity type on those keys, flyoutseason.com. And you'll see my ugly mug pop up, and there is a great way to kind of get a better understanding of my adventures. I try and chronicle my various explorations of the country, as well as other cool things like, yeah, the community page. So go check it out, it's awesome. And yeah, folks, wherever you're finding yourself, be it at some overpass in the Ozark Mountains or in your backyard, I sure hope you're keeping those feet in the water. And until next time, tight lines, bow.